After the president's girlfriend tacitly allowed the male assistant to take the project, I resigned and left, but the company went bankrupt. After negotiating a major project for the company, I received a ring from my girlfriend. I happily shared it on social media, thinking she was finally going to officially announce our marriage. My girlfriend's new male assistant suddenly slapped me and knocked over my workstation. "You're the director, at least have some dignity for stealing the gift my wife gave me, won't you?" My girlfriend not only didn't refute me, but instead said that I was unworthy of my position and publicly announced that the male assistant would take over the major project I had just negotiated. I only then realized that the person my girlfriend wanted to officially announce was not me, but him. For a moment, everyone in the company was holding up their phones to watch me make a fool of myself. But I wasn't angry at all. Instead, I smiled and stuffed the work badge into the male assistant's arms. "So you're the president's virtuous partner. I'll take the director position as an apology and wish you both a lifetime of happiness." Seeing my unusual behavior, my colleague was shocked and pulled me back, whispering, "Don't be impulsive, we can talk about it again if we lose a project." What he doesn't know is that I wasn't impulsive at all. Yesterday, as I passed by the office, I heard my girlfriend's male assistant, Ted, pestering her, "Edna, I want to make a name for myself. If you hand this new project over to me, I will definitely do a great job and make you see me in a new light." At that time, I didn't think much of it. After being underground lovers with my girlfriend Edna for 7 years, I turned down the olive branch offered by a big company and helped her start this company. 90% of the projects in the entire company were negotiated by me. She knows better than anyone how difficult this journey has been. She is also a person of strong principles and would never tamper with something as significant as a project. Moreover, she had once had a project snatched away by someone who sought to climb the social ladder, and she loathed such people the most. So, seeing the ring Edna sent today, I thought she finally realized that I am the best choice, and that she wants to settle down and marry me. However, I didn't expect Ted to turn the tables on me and smear my reputation by labeling me a thief, leaving me utterly humiliated. Little did she expect that just a few months after Ted joined the company, Edna would abandon her principles for him. Since that's the case, there's nothing worth staying for in this broken company. Edna still didn't know that their childish scheme had been uncovered by me. She thought I was just being jealous. She suddenly frowned at me and said, "What are you being so strange for?" Since Ted appeared, she always looks at me with prejudice. This time I didn't waste my breath. I simply said calmly, "You're overthinking it, I really sent him off. He lost both his girlfriend and his job." I didn't plan to stay long. Just as I was about to leave, Edna coldly pulled me into the office. The company is not large, and the office has poor sound insulation. She had just closed the office door when the employees outside, eager to join the fun, began to flatter Ted, clamoring to ask when he would get married and have children. Ted awkwardly replied, "Having children is a hardship for girls, I can't decide when that will happen." He completely acted like Edna's legitimate boyfriend, and due to Edna's tacit approval, the employees believed it without a doubt. Edna, upon hearing this, suddenly froze her hand that was pouring water, realizing she owed me something. The usually strong-willed her rarely softened her tone as she explained, "Ted is just a child who doesn't understand. He only said that because he thought it was fun, so don't take it to heart. He has relatives at the client company, and this project was able to go through thanks to him." I looked at her speechlessly. How ridiculous. Party A, Thunder Company, has a professional technical department and does not require outsourcing, so they rejected the collaboration from the very beginning. It was my unwillingness that led me to seek out various gifts from my grandfather and grandmother, just to meet with the person in charge on the other side. He generously gave me 30 seconds, and I seized the opportunity to introduce the product. After seeing my strength, he offered a high price to recruit me, but when that didn't work out, he agreed to cooperate. I stay up all night and run around for the project every day, but she sees none of it. Ted casually mentions something, and she believes it to be true. But if she thought about it even a little, she would clearly understand that if Ted really had those connections, he wouldn't be working as an assistant in this small, shabby company. Or perhaps she understood everything, but was just pretending to be confused. Seeing that I remained silent for a long time, Edna lowered her gaze for a moment, then stood up and made me a cup of coffee. Leaning close to my ear, she whispered, "I'm just acting with him, my only marriage partner will be you." In the past, every time we argued, when she softened her voice and made promises to me, I forgave her without any principles. So this time, she felt it would be the same, and with a wave of her hand, she said, "Continue with your work, I will take charge of the project." What she doesn't know is that I no longer want her. I pushed the chair away and stood up. "There's no need to go through all that trouble, I'll just leave." Saying this, I took out the resignation form, wrote it out in a flourish, and without hesitation, turned around and walked out of the office. Ted saw that I was about to leave and hurriedly stopped me, feigning grievance as he said, "Hernando, I know you are a master in the industry. You're right, I am not worthy of this position as the technical director. I should just give it back to you." He grabbed the work badge and shoved it haphazardly onto me. I just gave him a gentle push, but he fell over, knocking over a chair and pulling down the computer, startling the colleagues around us. Ted got up and, facing his caring colleagues, waved his hand generously and said it was no problem. Edna, disturbed by the sudden noise, rushed over in her 10-centimeter high heels. Once it was confirmed that Ted was fine, she frowned and glared at me. "Hernando, don't think that just because you're a long-time employee, you can do whatever you want. Yes, Hernando, the transition between old and new is also for the company's development. Don't take advantage of your seniority to bully the newcomers." The one who spoke the harshest words was my protege Walter, whom I had personally promoted. "Isn't it just a few projects discussed? He really thinks of himself as the boss. Seems like he's addicted to forming cliques, even a genius like Ted doesn't respect him. After all, we have been colleagues for many years, and I am the sales champion." In the past, everyone would respectfully call me Big Brother when they saw me. Now, one by one, they gaze at me with glee, wishing I would just roll away immediately. It doesn't matter anymore, let these people say whatever they want, I'm not going to serve them. I left the company without saying a word. Edna jogged up to me, and seeing that no one was around, she rubbed her brow and said, "You've been too tired lately. I'll give you some time off, you should rest for a while. Today is our 7th anniversary of being in love, so just stay at home and wait for me. I've prepared a surprise for you." As she finished speaking, the elevator arrived just in time, and I stepped in without saying a word. When I got home, I cooked something for myself, not intentionally waiting for her, and she still hadn't returned by the time it got dark. I put on my shoes, tidied myself up, and went out to meet the person in charge from the client, but I ran into a colleague on the way. The boy was slow to react, so he didn't distance himself from me like the other colleagues. Instead, he greeted me warmly. "Hernando, you are going to the promotion party that Edna is throwing for Ted, right? Let's go together, we'll split the travel costs." He happily said that he finally didn't have to squeeze into the subway anymore, but I shook my head and said, "No." He glanced at me awkwardly and said, "Didn't Edna call you?" I nodded indifferently and walked away. I faintly heard him mumbling his complaints. Edna really is protective, but I didn't turn back. She never protects anyone but Ted. For Ted, she could do anything, and canceling plans was not something she hadn't done before. Previously, I was hospitalized with pneumonia. She said she would come to the hospital to see me after the meeting, but I waited until dawn for her to finally arrive, saying she had been working overtime, when in fact she had been watching a movie with Ted. Some time ago, we had planned to take couple photos. I waited in a suit until the store closed, and she finally arrived, saying she was delayed by some last-minute work. In reality, she had been out shopping with Ted, buying a few well-fitting clothes. There are countless events like this, and every time I inquire, she retorts with an attitude of, "Work is the most important," making this way of interacting truly exhausting. In the cafe, the person in charge from Party A looked at the progress I submitted and exclaimed, "Hernando, are you really not considering changing jobs? The salary would increase tenfold." This time I did not refuse. The person in charge from party A happily suggested that any requests could be discussed. After discussing the benefits and compensation with him, I returned home to find Edna had already packed the food and was sitting on the sofa waiting for me. She cancelled on me again. In the past, she would explain a whole lot, but this time she said nothing at all. After a moment of silence, she pushed the lunchbox in front of me and said, "You must be tired today too, so don't bother cooking. It can be heated up and eaten." I looked down. The plastic lunchbox was a haphazard pile of dishes, lacking any aesthetic appeal, with stir-fried and boiled items mixed together, and I even spotted a piece of steamed cake soaking in the soup. It was clearly leftover food, carelessly packed. They couldn't even bear to sort and pack it, they just threw everything into one big box, and just looking at it was unappetizing. I waved my hand, "No need, I've already eaten." Edna looked at me deeply, and the usually cold her took the initiative to wrap her arms around my waist. "I'm sorry, he just got promoted after all, and as his boss, I have to show some support. I know you've been wronged during the day, so let's get our certificate this weekend." Hee hee. That sounds really nice. But when I was promoted to director, I was so happy that I took the initiative to treat myself to a promotion party. I sat in the private room eagerly waiting, while the waiter reheated the dishes 5 times. By the time the restaurant closed, not a single colleague dared to show up for the appointment. Every message I sent out vanished without a trace. A kind-hearted colleague quietly asked me if I had offended the president. I was still baffled at the time, only to realize later what had happened. When I was not in the office, she coldly scolded each colleague who said they were going to a banquet. "Is it because the workload is too light? Are you all just bored? Every day you only think about eating, drinking, and having fun. Is this what the company pays for, people like you who are useless? You might as well get lost." Thinking of this, I pried her restless hand from my waist and said coldly, "There's no need for that, Edna. Let's break up." The atmosphere in the room instantly froze. Edna gasped for breath, her suppressed emotions bursting forth. "I've made these sacrifices for the company's development, while others' boyfriends would be eager for it. How can you not understand this?" I ignored her twisted reasoning. She was just as self-absorbed as usual, mumbling about the importance of the company's development, saying that once the company went public, she would give me a place. I've listened so much that my ears are about to get calluses. I raised my hand to interrupt directly. "No need, I'm packing up and leaving right now." For so many years, Edna had been the boss with authority, and this was the first time her words were interrupted. Her face turned red with anger as she glared at me for a long time before coldly huffing, "No need, I'll just leave." She slammed the door and left with a bang. I didn't chase after them, quietly packing my things. Party A arranged for me a free luxury single room in the staff dormitory, which I can move into at any time. I just finished packing my things and called the moving company. When I was almost done with the move, I coincidentally ran into Ted escorting Edna home. They walked together, fingers interlocked, chatting and laughing. Edna also changed her aloof demeanor of the cold goddess, lowering her head with a charming smile, standing beside Ted, looking like a demure little bird relying on him. Ted discovered me first and deliberately held on tighter. Edna sensed something was wrong, followed his gaze, saw me, and quickly let go of his hand. She walked up to me, habitually ready to explain, but when she saw me loading things into the car, she was taken aback for a moment before changing her question. "It's so late, where are you going? Blind? Can't you see the big words, moving company?" I was about to continue moving things. Edna suddenly blocked my way and thrust the clothes she was holding into my hands. Seeing that I didn't move, she took the initiative to pull out the clothes and hold them up to me. "I know you've been busy lately and haven't had time to buy clothes, so I picked these up for you while passing by the mall. Did you buy this for me? I wear size XL, but this brand shirt is size M. The card number at the end of the payment slip pulled from the bag belongs to Edna, and the price is over 10,000. Where is it that you conveniently bought it for me? It must have been specifically chosen with Ted at the store, right?" How generous of you. Just 2 days ago, I bought a shirt for 200 and asked her if it looked good. She scolded me for wasting money with a cold face, nagging for over an hour about how hard it is to earn money, and said that no matter how well dressed I am, it can't compare to having real strength. What? Making money is that easy, right? I stood with my hands in my pockets, coldly watching them. No need for that. As the saying goes, a person relies on their clothes, a horse on its saddle, and a dog runs happily with a bell. Such expensive clothes are better left for Ted. Ted paused for a moment while putting on his clothes, and after realizing what was happening, he suddenly threw the clothes down and shouted angrily, "Do you dare to insult me?" He glared at me with red eyes and rushed over, ready to strike. I stood still, and with a slap, I sent him tumbling to the ground. Not just that, I dare to hit you again. Ted's slender limbs were like wooden sticks. The only reason he could hit me during the day was that I was caught off guard. Now, I have returned that slap to him. Edna shouted, heartbroken as she held Ted in her arms. "Hernando. Let's talk this out. Why hit someone? If you want to leave, then go, don't come back." I didn't plan to come back, and I didn't need her to say much. I turned around and got into the moving company's truck, racing towards a new life. After leaving my job, I directly joined the client company, where I was entrusted with important responsibilities. Upon arriving again at Edna's company, I, as the client, was welcomed in by the receptionist. As soon as I walked into the office area, I saw Ted wearing the director's badge, striding through the employees' workstations with an imposing presence. Make this logo a bit larger while also making it a bit smaller. When I asked you to adjust the black, I meant not pure black, but that iridescent black like a crow's wing. After looking at it all, the first version is still better overall, but I like the font from the 7th version, and use the color from the 16th version. Finish the changes today and send it to me for a look. There was a lot of resentment at the workstation, and someone couldn't hold back and retorted, "This design has already been approved by the client, the main issue now is the stability of the program." Ted snorted coldly, "The client is just a nouveau riche, what does he know about true art? I'm the one in charge here, with my top-notch taste. The client is guaranteed to be satisfied, and who knows, if he's in a good mood, he might even give us a bonus. Come on." The company developed a brand new system just to provide convenience to a wide range of users, not to hold an art exhibition online. Moreover, these colorful words are so unclear. Are you planning to contribute to the ophthalmology department of the hospital? With Ted's level, it's no wonder he can be reused. The efficiency is getting worse and worse, the program crashes as soon as it runs, and the quality has shrunk to an unacceptable level. Some colleagues saw my figure, and the once hostile gazes turned into pleas for help. And that disciple Walter, who used to speak harshly to me, has long been kicked out of the creative team and has become a gopher who pays for his own coffee. Ted cast a disdainful glance at me and said, "Looks like I need to suggest to Edna that we add a security position, otherwise, any Tom, Dick, or Harry could walk into the company." The receptionist, bending slightly at the waist, was just about to remind him to watch his words, as she was representing the client. The next moment, Edna strutted past me in her high heels, thinking I had come to the wrong place. She huffed, "Oh. Isn't this Hernando? Realizing it's hard to find work out there, are you thinking of coming back?" Ted chuckled and said with feigned goodwill, "I have high hopes for Hernando's abilities. I think we can arrange for him to take a supervisory position under me. If he works hard, it won't be long before he achieves something great." Edna looked at me disdainfully with her arms crossed. "Supervisor? He doesn't deserve that. He can come back, but he has to start from the ground up as a regular employee, with his salary cut in half and all performance bonuses deducted." Other colleagues gasped in shock, distancing themselves from me, fearing they might catch the bad luck. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Edna still doesn't know that I have transformed into her client, no longer the obedient follower I once was. Edna raised an eyebrow and asked curiously, "What are you laughing at?" I silently took a contract out of my briefcase and slapped it on the table. Let's get to know each other again. I am Hernando, the technical director of Thunder Company. I am here to inform you, the project is suspended, the contract is terminated. The contempt in Edna and Ted's eyes completely turned to shock at that moment. The once crowded and noisy office has now become so quiet that a pin drop can be heard. Unbeknownst to how much time had passed, a faint sound emerged from the crowd. Someone exclaimed a curse in shock, completely shattering the eerie atmosphere. Edna straightened her body and looked me over. Hernando, you haven't gone crazy, have you? Ted breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, this joke isn't very funny. A joke? I looked at Edna coldly. If it's a joke, just take a look at the contract and you'll know. Edna immediately put on a stern face and leaned over with Ted to look at the contract, her expression growing increasingly grim. When she found out that I had really become the director of the client company, she looked at me in disbelief and asked, is the contract termination your way of getting back at me? She was thinking a lot, but I didn't have that kind of time. The quality submitted by your company seriously deviates from what we discussed at the beginning, and it has also affected our reputation. It's not just about terminating the contract, this is the compensation you need to pay. Saying this, I took out another document from my briefcase. Edna stared wide-eyed at the string of numbers, shocked, and exclaimed, are you robbing me? I spread my hands and said, if you're not satisfied, you can file a lawsuit in court. The Thunder Legal Department will accompany you to the end. Goodbye. I turned and left, leaving a group of people staring at each other in bewilderment. As soon as I stepped out of the company door, I heard Edna's roar at the receptionist, why didn't you say something sooner? This situation is all your fault, you're fired. It's still the same as before, just knowing how to vent anger on others. The real culprits behind all of this are her protected leader and the talentless Ted who oversees everything, yet she only targets the innocent receptionist. As soon as I reached the elevator, Walter caught up with me, his head lowered in apology, Master, please take me with you. I know I was wrong. This little bastard only makes me pay for coffee and run errands, never letting me do anything good. Walter graduated from university and started working under me. For 3 years, I devoted myself to teaching him, almost chewing up knowledge to feed it to him. But he trampled on me when I was down and now he wants to shamelessly come back to me. Where in the world is there such a good thing? I looked at him coldly, what is Walter talking about? I'm just someone who only knows how to form small groups, I can't offer you any opportunities for promotion. You can really learn a thing or two about flattery and sycophancy from Ted. Walter turned completely pale. As I stepped into the elevator, I saw Edna rushing over in a hurry. I pressed the elevator button first, and she stomped her feet in anger, shouting defiantly, it's just one project, if it's gone, it's gone. I'll get you more projects to see. I refuse to believe that if the company goes under, you won't survive. I didn't respond. With the foundation I once laid, even if I'm not there, the company will operate normally and won't go bankrupt. But if the position of power is still given to Ted, then it's hard to say. I returned to the company, worked diligently, led the team, and developed a brand new system, achieving great success. The boss personally hosted a banquet to congratulate me. The boss specifically booked a large private room and invited our entire technical department. Everyone walked in, arms around each other's shoulders, with smiles on their faces. As I was about to enter amidst the crowd, I saw Edna, drenched in sweat and looking flustered, appear at the door, her high heels having broken a strap. Did you change your phone number? She no longer had the aggressive tone from before, just a hint of complaint in her question. She must have been very anxious these days, unable to get in touch with me. I don't know where she heard the news, but she actually showed up at my celebration banquet. I stepped past her and entered. She was eager to catch up. I stopped in my tracks and coldly stared at her. This is our company's gathering, outsiders should please leave. The etiquette lady awkwardly walked up to Edna and said, I'm sorry, ma'am, but our store has been booked exclusively by this guest today. You can come back next time. Edna looked at me as I entered, anxiously shouting, I'm his girlfriend, I'm here to find him. The etiquette lady maintained a friendly smile, but that gentleman doesn't know you, so please step outside first. Edna called my name several times, but I didn't respond, and she stomped her foot in anger and ran away. The boss looked at me with a smile and said, "The reason you wouldn't leave before was for her, wasn't it?" I tugged at the corner of my mouth and said, "Yes, but not anymore." The boss smiled and patted me on the shoulder. "Let's not talk about the past anymore. Today is your celebration banquet. Everyone eat well, drink well, and have fun. Money is no object." Everyone cheered and celebrated, with endless praise pouring in. I smiled and responded one by one while holding the cup. Edna stood outside the store, shivering in the cold. She pitifully leaned against the transparent glass, staring at me. I waved to call the waiter over, and her eyes widened in surprise, excitedly thinking that I had softened and compromised. However, when the waiter simply drove her away, her expression changed completely, becoming terrifyingly gloomy. After I had my fill of food and drink, I stepped out, said goodbye to my colleagues, and prepared to take a taxi home. Edna rubbed her numb legs, blocking my way, tears streaming down her face. "How could you go to that company? Hernando, do you know? The company we started together is about to go under." I looked at her coldly. "I left a long time ago. Even if the company goes bankrupt, it has nothing to do with me." Just then, Ted ran over from across the street, thoughtfully draping a coat over Edna's shoulders. He turned to me and questioned, "Are you even a man? Letting your girlfriend wait outside in this cold? Edna is just reusing me, and you're not happy about it. But you wouldn't go so far as to sabotage all the company's projects out of spite for Edna, would you?" Hearing his accusations one after another, I realized that ever since Thunder Company terminated the partnership, it was as if a domino effect had been set in motion, causing other projects to encounter problems one by one, leading to forced contract terminations. The company's work has basically come to a halt, and we still have to pay a large amount in penalties for breach of contract. The most critical issue is that a company operating at a loss still has daily expenses such as rent, utilities, and employee salaries. For every day it stops, Edna loses a significant amount of money. At this moment, she had completely lost her proud demeanor and looked at me. "Hernando, ever since you left, I've realized that the company lost its core without you. Can you come back? The director position is still yours. Let's start over." Upon hearing this, Ted's expression immediately changed. "Edna, I admit he has more experience than I do, but can he understand what young people like? Can he keep up with the new era?" Ted had been rambling on, always indulging his Edna, but this time he didn't defend him anymore and couldn't help but speak the truth. "Enough, Ted, don't you understand? The reason the company has fallen to this point is because of your incompetence and your misguided leadership. You keep fixating on useless details and making endless revisions, while ignoring the crucial aspects that truly matter. This has led to the project being ruined, resulting in contract terminations from various clients, and now we have to pay compensation." Ted, who was just bragging, suddenly fell silent, his fists clenched and his eyes turned red. "I'm sorry, Edna, I'm worthless. Someone like me doesn't deserve to live." He ran onto the road like a madman, charging through red lights. The frightened drivers hurriedly slammed on their brakes, letting out a string of curses. Edna turned pale with fright and wanted to follow. Seeing me still waiting for the bus, she hesitated for a moment and gritted her teeth, saying, "I'm sorry, I'm worried something might happen to him. Let's leave it at that for today, and I'll come to talk to you next time. My number hasn't changed, remember to add me back, we can chat online." As she spoke, she called out Ted's name while chasing after him. My ride arrived, and I got in without paying her any mind. Laughing to death. "We've already broken up, and you're still thinking about me adding you back." When I got home in the evening, I saw that Edna had sent several friend requests and kept asking me why I hadn't accepted them. I didn't reply. After a beautiful sleep, on her way to work the next day, Edna, with dark circles under her eyes, was stuck in traffic. "Hernando, do you really not care if I live or die? I really can't take it anymore. I silently avoided her. Don't you have a high-achieving student studying abroad? Can't he find a way? Edna had a look that said, I knew you were still angry, and she smiled as she assured, I know you're still mad at him. I've already fired him, and the position of director will always be yours from now on. When a person reaches the extreme of silence, they will laugh out loud. I am a director at a large company, highly valued by my boss, with a high salary. Why should I go to her nearly bankrupt company to be a laborer? I shook my head and was about to leave when suddenly someone in the opposite building shouted, and a crowd gathered around. Ted stood on the rooftop across from Edna, calling her, Edna, it's me. I've been so arrogant and useless. I've betrayed your trust, and now the company is on the brink of collapse. Firing me isn't enough. I can't repay you with money, I can only pay with my life. Edna cried out in a panic, Ted, please calm down. I'm just temporarily suspending you. Once the company gets better, will you come back? Ted spoke firmly, I don't want to hold you back. Edna's face turned pale with urgency, and she gritted her teeth, Ted, come down, the director position is still yours. I didn't stick around to see the commotion, I left after Edna answered the phone, and I don't know what they talked about afterward. This incident alarmed the firefighters, and the noisy crowd around them was aware of it. Even our colleagues in the company are discussing it. Do you know about that kid who jumped off the building? He was just threatening the company, he didn't really dare to jump. He got pulled back by the firefighters and ended up so scared he wet himself. A group of people laughed and joked, busying themselves, and before long, the entire morning had passed. My colleague and I went downstairs to eat, and Edna ran over with the coffee she had just bought. Hernando, I'm sorry, the situation was special at the time. But don't worry, even though I promised him the director position, I didn't specify which department. She playfully winked at me, I've opened a brand new department, just giving him a framework to play with. The position of technical director belongs solely to you. I treated her like air, pulling my colleague past her, let's go eat at that Huangmen chicken place. Edna was neglected, trailing behind, looking for a chance to speak to me alone. But I finished my meal and went into the company, and she couldn't keep up. Later, she brought me flowers at the door every day, seeking reconciliation. I know you hate Ted, and I've kept my distance from him. Hernando, let's make up. She brings me a homemade breakfast every day, and it's always different, but I never accept it. In the past, when I was with her, she enjoyed my kindness while being entangled with Ted. Now that I have left her, I realize my regret. It's too late. The weather was too cold, and I didn't pay attention for a moment and caught a slight cold. On my way to the hospital, I passed by a ward. Edna was carefully attending to Ted, who was lying in bed, and gently said, Ted, this is the porridge I just made. It's a bit hot, so let me blow on it before you drink. By the way, is there anything else you want to eat? I can make it for you. As she spoke, her peripheral vision suddenly caught sight of me, and in shock, she put down her bowl and rushed over to grab me, repeatedly explaining, I really kept my distance from him, but he was on the rooftop a while ago, got scared, and fell ill. I didn't want to take care of him, but he has relatives in your company, right? I was afraid he would retaliate, and for your sake, I took care of him. It's for me again. Her excuses are always the same few, repeated over and over. Doesn't she ever get tired of it? Moreover, on the day Ted jumped from the building, I saw his aunt, who was the cleaning team leader. How does he want to take revenge? Does he want his aunt to cut my internet cable? I pulled her hand away from mine and took a step back to maintain my distance. Edna, we've broken up, we have nothing to do with each other. Who you want to take care of or get close to has nothing to do with me. Edna was taken aback, her eyes reddening. She suddenly noticed the list I was holding and hurriedly asked, Are you sick? Where do you feel unwell? Let me get you some medicine, you should rest well. Edna reached out to grab the registration slip, and just as I was about to refuse, Ted suddenly shouted from the ward, Edna. My head hurts so much, I feel like I'm dying. Please help me call the doctor. Clearly, every hospital bed has a call button, and nurses are constantly coming and going, yet Edna still panicked and pushed me aside, rushing in to comfort Ted. She held Ted close, softly comforting him. In a corner where she couldn't see, Ted's gaze towards me was filled with provocation, exuding the demeanor of a victor. Bored. I shook my head and took the list to the window to get the medicine. By the time Edna remembered, I had already left, and she was searching for me throughout the hospital. Later, after a period of calm, she came out again, looking even more disheveled than before. She sold all her valuable jewelry and sold her clothes at low prices, all to raise a little bit of money. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face, and stubbornly wiped them away. Fernando, it must have been really hard for you when you were running those businesses back then, enduring disdain and still having to persevere. It turns out that during this time she had been busy running her own business, which is why she finally understood the hardships I had endured before. I smiled and said, yeah, when your company first started, it was too small. I had to negotiate deals as a technical staff member. Now it's different, I just need to do my job well, and there's a dedicated department for negotiations, so I don't have to worry about it. It's not tiring at all, and my salary is quite high. Edna froze, feeling quite awkward. After a moment of hesitation, she gritted her teeth and said, what does a salary matter? I can let you invest your skills, working for others is exhausting. It's better to be your own boss. I sneered, am I the owner of a company that's about to go bankrupt? Just as Edna was about to explain, her phone rang. On the other end of the phone, the employee said urgently, Edna, you need to come back quickly, Ted has cut his wrists. Edna shivered with urgency and took a step to leave. But just when our eyes met, she stopped in her tracks, gritted her teeth, and resolutely said, what Ted? He's already been fired. If he wants to commit suicide, call the police and send him to the hospital. I'm not a doctor, so why come to me? Saying this, Edna hung up the phone. She also pulled me to look, saying that she had deleted all of Ted's contact information and would definitely not contact him again. Dragging me and not letting me go, they started to ramble on and criticize Ted. Only then did I realize that she had been running around recently, and after much effort, she had finally secured a small deal due to her previous good performance. When Ted accepted it, he found the price too low and had a terrible attitude, even getting into an argument with the client on the spot. In a fit of anger, Party A terminated the contract, blacklisted the company, and spread negative rumors about it everywhere. Even Edna's reputation was tarnished, leaving her with no opportunities at all. Seeing that I had not responded for a long time, Edna began to play the emotional card, trying to win me back. When we first established the company, we had to stretch every penny, and later, even when we had money, we became reluctant to spend it. Not at all. She just can't bear to give me flowers. The gift for Ted is definitely one of a kind. Ted, a recent graduate, comes from an average family. He manages to dress handsomely every day, relying on Edna's support. It can be said that Ted's entire outfit, including his underwear, was bought for him by Edna. And I have given so much to the company for her, yet I have nothing. Looking back now, I really was swept away by love. How could I have endured it? Edna didn't know what I was thinking and kept rambling on. At that time, you worked so hard to land your first project, you were so happy that you couldn't sleep all night, saying the company was your child and you wanted to see it thrive. Later, many companies tried to poach you, but you never left. Fernando, I'm begging you, okay? The company needs you, and I can't do without you, she said, choking back tears. I shook her hand off once again and said seriously, Edna, I'm only going to say this one last time, it's over between us. Don't come to bother me again. Edna looked at my resolute figure as I left, and she walked to the riverbank, shouting, Fernando. If you don't help me, I'll die. After all these years together, are you really going to just watch me die? I didn't look back, I just dropped a line and walked away. I'm not you, and I won't easily abandon my principles because of someone's threats. Take care of yourself. Behind me, there was a splash, and the surrounding passers-by gasped, all rushing to save the person. Only I walked against the tide, unwavering. Edna jumped into the river, but she was quickly rescued. In the end, her company went bankrupt, and not only that, she also incurred a large amount of debt. The employees who still hadn't received their wages banded together and took the matter to court. Later, Ted proposed to her, and she accepted. After getting married, the witty and humorous Ted in her eyes had completely changed, or perhaps he simply no longer wanted to pretend. Spending all day playing games, doing nothing, just waiting for Edna to work hard, paying off debts while supporting him. Edna is under a lot of pressure, working during the day and setting up a stall at night. One time, by chance, I passed by her stall, and it was she who recognized me. But as soon as she finished speaking, Ted, who was sitting by the roadside in a white t-shirt playing a game, suddenly put away his phone and slapped her across the face, still calling him. If you want to get back together with him so badly, just go. Ted is just not as well built as I am, but as a man, his strength is considerable, and Edna cannot resist him at all. She wore a dirty apron, and her once fair fingers had calluses. A passerby stepped forward to dissuade him, and he looked at me with a sense of grievance. And I paid no heed, leaving coldly.